The humid air of Savannah, Georgia, hung heavy with the scent of magnolias, a stark contrast to the suffocating grief that clung to the Atwood family. Their lives, one a picture of Southern charm and tranquility, were shattered on a sweltering July evening. Dr. Julian Atwood, a respected cardiologist at St. Joseph's Hospital, and his wife, Eleanor, a beloved history professor at Savannah College of Art and Design SCAD, were found dead in their meticulously restored Victorian home on Jones Street. Their two children, Amelia, a rising senior at Savannah Arts Academy, and Ethan, a freshman at the University of Georgia, were left to grapple with a horrifying aftermath. The initial shock gave way to a numbing disbelief, a shared, silent scream that echoed to the empty halls of their once vibrant home. Detective Isabella Izzy Diaz, a Savannah native with a sharp mind and an even sharper sense of justice, was assigned to the case. She walked through the crime scene, the oppressive heat mirroring the tension in the air. The house, with its high ceilings, antique furniture, and walls adorned with family portraits, felt like a frozen tableau, a snapshot of life abruptly interrupted. The dramatic irony of the situation was almost unbearable. The Atwoods were pillars of the community, admired for their philanthropy, their intelligence, and their unwavering devotion to each other. Julian was known for his gentle bedside manner and his tireless work at the hospital, often providing care to those who couldn't afford it. Eleanor's lectures on Southern history were legendary, captivating students with her passion and her ability to bring the past to life. They were the last people anyone would expect to fall victim to such a brutal crime. The initial investigation focused on the obvious: robbery. The house showed signs of forced entry, and some valuable jewelry was missing. But Izzy couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The scene felt staged, too clean, too precise for a random burglary. There was a coldness to it, a deliberate cruelty that spoke of something far more personal. As the days turned into weeks, the investigation stalled. The media, initially feeding on the sensationalism of the perfect family murder, began to lose interest. The police faced mounting pressure from the community, desperate for answers, for closure. Amelia and Ethan, meanwhile, were left to navigate a world without their parents, their grief compounded by the agonizing uncertainty of not knowing why. Ethan, fueled by a potent cocktail of grief and anger, began his own investigation. He pored over his parents' belongings, searching for clues, for anything that might shed light on the darkness that had consumed them. He spent hours at the Chatham County Public Library, poring over old documents and newspaper articles, convinced that the key to his parents' murder lay hidden in the past. Amelia, on the other hand, sought solace in her art. A talented painter, she channeled her grief onto the canvas, creating hauntingly beautiful images that reflected her inner turmoil. Her paintings, dark and evocative, became a silent testament to her loss, a way to express the unspeakable pain that words could not capture. The first major power shift in the investigation came unexpectedly. A break-in at a local pawn shop led to the recovery of some of the Atwood stolen jewelry. The pawnbroker, a nervous young man named Kevin, claimed he bought the jewelry from a kid who seemed really messed up. Kevin's description of the kid matched that of Tyler, a troubled teenager from a nearby affluent neighborhood. Tyler was known to the police for petty theft and drug possession, but nothing of this magnitude. Izzy interviewed Tyler, and he vehemently denied any involvement in the murders. But Izzy saw the fear in his eyes, the way he shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. The dramatic irony deepened. Could this troubled teenager, with his history of petty crime, really be capable of such a heinous act? Or was he a pawn in a larger, more sinister game? Izzy decided to dig deeper into Tyler's background. She discovered that Tyler had a history with the Atwoods, a connection that had been previously overlooked. It turned out that Tyler had been caught vandalizing the Atwoods' property a few years prior, spray painting graffiti on their fence. Julian, instead of pressing charges, had offered Tyler a chance to make amends, mentoring him and helping him get into a rehabilitation program. This revelation cast a new light on the case. Could Tyler's resentment have festered over time, twisting into a murderous rage? Or was there another, more complex motive at play? The suspense ratcheted up when Izzy received an anonymous tip, a grainy video file sent to her personal email. The video showed a figure entering the Atwood house on the night of the murders. The figure was too blurry to be clearly identified, but Izzy recognized the gait, the way the person moved. It wasn't Tyler. It was someone older, someone more familiar. The video sent a jolt of ice through Izzy's veins. She realized with a sickening certainty that she had been looking in the wrong direction. The killer was an outsider. There was someone close to the Atwoods, someone who knew their routines, their secrets, their vulnerabilities. The investigation took a sharp turn, focusing on the Atwoods' inner circle. Izzy re-interviewed friends, colleagues, and even some family members looking for inconsistencies, for hidden resentments, for any hint of a motive. Ethan, in his relentless pursuit of the truth, uncovered a series of cryptic emails on his father's computer. Emails that hinted at a secret Julian had been keeping, a secret that threatened to destroy his carefully constructed life. The emails were addressed to an unknown recipient, someone identified only as A. They spoke of a past mistake, a debt that needed to be paid, and a growing sense of fear. The life lesson at the heart of the tragedy began to emerge. Even the most perfect of families can harbor dark secrets, secrets that can fester and ultimately lead to destruction. The Atwoods, for all their outward appearances of happiness and success, were not immune to the complexities and contradictions of a human heart. The climax of the investigation arrived during a seemingly innocuous event, a memorial service held at SCAD in honor of Eleanor. As Izzy watched the mourners, her gaze fell upon a woman standing at the back of the chapel, a woman whose face was etched with profound sadness, a woman who seemed both familiar and out of place. It was Alana, Eleanor's estranged sister, someone Izzy had interviewed briefly at the beginning of the investigation and dismissed as a grieving relative. But something about Alana's demeanor struck Izzy as odd. Her grief seemed performative, her eyes darting nervously around the room. Izzy decided to approach her, to engage her in conversation. As they spoke, Izzy noticed a small detail, a detail that sent a shockwave of realization through her. Alana was wearing a piece of jewelry that Izzy recognized, a distinctive emerald ring that had belonged to Eleanor, a ring that was supposed to be in police custody. The dramatic irony reached its peak. The killer had been hiding in plain sight, masquerading as a grieving sister, while all along, the evidence had been literally on her finger. Izzy arrested Alana at the memorial service, the gasps of the mourners echoing through the chapel. Alana, confronted with the evidence, finally broke down, confessing to the murders. Her motive was a twisted tale of jealousy and resentment, a lifelong bitterness towards Eleanor for stealing her life, her opportunities, and her happiness. The secret Julian had been hiding was an affair he'd had with Alana years ago, an affair that had resulted in a child Alana believed Eleanor had denied her. In Alana's warped mind, killing Eleanor and Julian was an act of revenge, a way to reclaim what she believed was rightfully hers. The justice served was swift and decisive. Alana was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, her carefully constructed facade of grief shattered, her true nature exposed. But the story doesn't end there. In the final days of the trial, a new piece of evidence surfaced, a letter written by Eleanor shortly before her death. The letter was addressed to Julian, and it contained a shocking revelation. Eleanor had discovered the truth about Julian's affair with Alana, and she had begun her own investigation, determined to expose the truth. The letter ended with a chilling warning. "If anything happens to me, Julian, you will know who is responsible." The implication was clear. Eleanor had known she was in danger, but from whom? Alana or someone else? The letter raised a disturbing question. Was Alana acting alone, or was she part of a larger conspiracy? The scene leaves Izzy standing at Eleanor's grave, the letter clutched in her hand, a sense of unease settling over her. The case was closed, justice had been served, but the feeling that something was still unresolved, something dark and dangerous, lingered in the air. The unthinkable crime in Savannah was solved, but the truth, it seemed, was far from fully revealed. Detective Isabella Izzy Diaz stared at Eleanor Atwood's grave, the unearthed letter a chilling testament to the secrets buried beneath the veneer of Savannah's elite. The letter, with its ominous warning, had thrown a wrench into the tidy resolution of the case. Alana Atwood was behind bars, convicted of the murders, but Eleanor's final words suggested a wider conspiracy, a tangled web of deceit that stretched beyond a single jealous woman. Izzy reread the letter, the elegant script seeming to mock the brutality of the crime. "If anything happens to me, Julian, you will know who is responsible." The words echoed in her mind, raising a disturbing question. Did Eleanor suspect Alana, or was there someone else, someone closer to Julian, who posed a threat? The obvious answer was Julian himself. But Julian was dead, a victim alongside his wife. Yet, the dramatic irony of the situation gnawed at Izzy. Could Julian have orchestrated his own death, framing Alana to cover his tracks? It seemed far-fetched, a plot worthy of a dime store thriller. But Izzy had learned in her years on the force that the truth was often stranger than fiction. Driven by a need to unravel this new thread, Izzy delved deeper into the Atwoods' lives. She revisited Julian's colleagues at St. Joseph Hospital, his friends at the Savannah Yacht Club, and even his former patients, searching for any hint of the darkness Eleanor's letter alluded to. She discovered that Julian, beneath his charming and altruistic facade, had been a man of complex desires and hidden vulnerabilities. He had accumulated significant debt over the years, investing in a series of failed real estate ventures. His financial woes had been a closely guarded secret, known only to a select few. One name kept surfacing in her investigation: Arthur Davenport. Davenport was a wealthy real estate developer and a prominent figure in Savannah society. He was also a ruthless businessman, known for his cutthroat tactics and his ability to manipulate people to get what he wanted. Julian had been heavily indebted to Davenport, and rumors swirled that Davenport had been putting pressure on him to repay the loans. Izzy interviewed Davenport at his opulent waterfront mansion on Isle of Hope. Davenport, a picture of Southern gentility, dismissed any suggestion of wrongdoing. He claimed that his dealings with Julian had been purely professional and that he had been shocked and saddened by the Atwoods' deaths. But Izzy wasn't convinced. She sensed a coldness beneath Davenport's polished exterior, a hint of something sinister lurking in his eyes. The dramatic irony was palpable. Davenport, a man who epitomized Savannah's elite, might be connected to the brutal murder of one of its most respected families. As Izzy dug deeper into financial records, she uncovered a series of suspicious transactions between Julian and Davenport. Large sums of money had changed hands in the months leading up to the murders, and some of the transactions were disguised as charitable donations to obscure their true nature. The evidence suggested that Julian was desperate, possibly facing financial ruin. Could Davenport have used this desperation to his advantage, manipulating Julian into some kind of scheme? And if so, what role did Eleanor play in all of this? The investigation took another twist when Izzy discovered that Eleanor had been conducting her own private investigation into Julian's financial affairs. She had hired a private investigator, a former colleague of Izzy's named Marcus, to look into the suspicious transactions. Marcus, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for discretion, had uncovered a trail of deceit that led directly to Davenport. He had found evidence that Julian had been involved in a shady land deal with Davenport, a deal that had gone sour and left Julian owing Davenport a substantial amount of money. But Marcus's investigation had been abruptly cut short. A week before the Atwoods murders, Marcus had been found dead in his office, the victim of an apparent suicide. The police had ruled it a closed case, but Izzy had always had her doubts. Marcus was a meticulous man, not prone to despair. The dramatic irony was almost unbearable. Two investigators, both digging into the same dark secrets, both silenced before they could expose the truth. Izzy began to suspect that Marcus's death was not a suicide, but a carefully orchestrated murder, a cover-up to protect someone or something far more powerful than she had imagined. The evidence mounted against Davenport. The financial irregularities, the suspicious transactions, Marcus's untimely death, and Eleanor's letter all pointed to him. But Izzy needed more than just circumstantial evidence. She needed a smoking gun, something that would definitively link Davenport to the murders. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: Amelia Atwood. In the aftermath of her parents' deaths, Amelia had become increasingly withdrawn, channeling her grief into her art. But beneath her quiet sorrow, a fierce determination burned. She had inherited her mother's intelligence and her father's tenacity, and she was determined to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Amelia had been going through her mother's personal belongings when she found a hidden journal, a diary that Eleanor had kept for years. The journal contained a detailed account of Eleanor's investigation into Julian's financial dealings, her suspicions about Davenport, and her growing fear for her own safety. In one entry, Eleanor wrote about a secret meeting she had arranged with Davenport, a meeting where she planned to confront him with her findings. The entry included the date, time, and location of the meeting. The old cotton mill on the outskirts of Savannah, a place with a dark and sinister history. The date of the meeting was the night of the murders. The revelation sent a jolt of adrenaline through Izzy. She realized that Eleanor had been close to uncovering the truth, that she had been a direct threat to Davenport, and that Davenport, to protect himself, had silenced her, and Julian as well, perhaps to tie up loose ends. Izzy organized a team of detectives and headed to the old cotton mill. The mill, a crumbling relic of Savannah's industrial past, stood silhouetted against the darkening sky, a monument to secrets and forgotten tragedies. Inside, the mill was a labyrinth of shadows and decaying machinery. The air was thick with the smell of dust and decay, the silence broken only by the occasional creak of the aging structure. As they searched the mill, Izzy felt a growing sense of unease. The place felt wrong, tainted by a dark energy. It was the perfect setting for a sinister encounter, a place where secrets could be buried and lives could be extinguished. They found nothing at first. But then, in a hidden chamber beneath the main floor, they discovered a secret room, a makeshift office filled with files, maps, and other incriminating evidence. The room was a treasure trove of information, revealing the extent of Davenport's illicit activities. But there was something else in the room, something that sent a chill down Izzy's spine, a series of photographs, neatly arranged on a table. The photographs were the Atwood family, taken over the years. There were pictures of Julian and Eleanor, smiling and happy, pictures of Amelia and Ethan as children, playing in the park, celebrating birthdays, and even a recent picture of Amelia at her high school graduation. The photographs were not random. They were arranged in a specific order, a timeline of the Atwoods' lives. But some of the photographs were marked, circled in red ink. The marked photographs were all of Eleanor. The implication was clear. Davenport had been watching them, stalking them, and Eleanor in particular. The dramatic irony was horrifying. The Atwoods had been living under the watchful eye of their killer, their every move scrutinized, their lives meticulously mapped out. As Izzy stared at the photographs, a sudden noise echoed through the mill, a sound that made her blood run cold. It was a sound of footsteps, heavy and deliberate, coming from the shadows. Izzy drew her weapon, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew, with a chilling certainty, that they had found him. But as the figure emerged from the darkness, it wasn't Davenport. It was someone else. Someone Izzy had seen before, someone she thought she knew. It was Marcus, the private investigator, the man who was supposed to be dead. He stood before her, his face pale and gaunt, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and defiance. He was alive, but he was clearly not well. He looked like a ghost, a shadow of his former self. "It's not what you think, Izzy," he said, his voice weak and raspy. "I can explain." But before he could utter another word, a shot rang out, shattering the silence of the mill. Marcus cried out, clutching his chest, and collapsed to the ground, dead. Izzy whirled around, her gun raised, but she was too late. The shooter had vanished back into the shadows, leaving behind only the echo of the gunshot and the lingering scent of gunpowder. Izzy knelt beside Marcus's body, her mind reeling. He was alive, then dead again, and he knew something important. What had he wanted to tell her? What was the explanation he had spoken of? And who had killed him? Davenport? Or someone else? Someone even more powerful? Someone who wanted to silence Marcus permanently? The case of the Atwood family tragedy was far from over. It had taken a dark and twisted turn, leading Izzy down a rabbit hole of deceit, betrayal, and murder. The tangled web was growing more complex, the secrets more dangerous, and the truth more elusive than ever. Detective Isabella, Izzy, Diaz stared at Marcus's lifeless body, the echo of the gunshot still ringing in her ears. The old cotton mill, with its labyrinthine corridors and decaying machinery, had become a stage for a deadly game, a place where secrets were violently guarded. Marcus's dying words, "It's not what you think, Izzy," hung in the air, a haunting riddle that Izzy was determined to solve. The immediate question was, who had killed him? Davenport was the obvious suspect. But Izzy couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it than that. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, but the picture they formed was more complex and sinister than she had ever imagined. Izzy ordered a thorough search of the mill, her team meticulously combing through every room, every shadow, every hidden corner. They found more evidence of Davenport's illicit activities, ledgers detailing his involvement in illegal land deals, documents connecting him to other unsolved crimes, and a collection of surveillance photos, not just of the Atwood family, but of other prominent figures in Savannah society. It became clear that Davenport was not just a corrupt businessman. He was a master manipulator, a puppet master pulling the strings of Savannah's elite. He had amassed wealth and power through ruthless ambition and a complete disregard for the law. But what was his connection to the Atwoods, and why were they killed? The answer, Izzy realized, lay in the secret room, in the carefully arranged photographs of the Atwood family. The photographs marked in red ink, the ones focused on Eleanor, were the key. Eleanor had been a threat to Davenport, not because of what she knew about his financial dealings with Julian, but because of something she had discovered about his past. Izzy returned to Eleanor's journal, poring over the entries again, searching for the missing piece. And then she found it, a single cryptic sentence buried in the middle of a seemingly innocuous passage. The Davenport Foundation is not what it seems. The Davenport Foundation was a charitable organization, a cornerstone of Savannah's philanthropic community. Davenport had used the foundation to cultivate his image as a benevolent benefactor, a pillar of society. But Eleanor's journal suggested a darker purpose. Izzy decided to investigate the foundation. She started by examining its financial records, looking for any irregularities. But everything appeared to be in order. The foundation's books were meticulously maintained, its donations and expenditures accounted for. But Izzy wasn't deterred. She knew that the devil was in the details, and she was determined to find the crack in Davenport's carefully constructed facade. She focused on the foundation's beneficiaries, the organizations and individuals who had received its grants. And that's when she found it, a series of large donations to a small, obscure historical society located on a remote island off the coast of Georgia. The Historical Society was dedicated to preserving the history of a particular family, a family whose name sent a chill down Izzy's spine, the Davenports. The Historical Society was a front. It was a way for Davenport to funnel money and conceal his true activities. But what was he hiding? What was so important about his family history that he would go to such lengths to protect it? Izzy decided to visit the island. She took a small boat, the salt spray stinging her face as she crossed the choppy waters of the Atlantic. The island was isolated and eerie, shrouded in mist and mystery. The Historical Society was housed in an old, crumbling mansion, a relic of a bygone era. Inside the mansion, Izzy found a treasure trove of information. Old letters, diaries, and documents that chronicled the history of the Davenport family. And what she discovered was shocking. The Davenports were not the benevolent philanthropists they claimed to be. Their wealth was built on a dark secret, a legacy of slavery, exploitation, and violence. The family had amassed its fortune through brutal means, and they had gone to great lengths to conceal their past. Eleanor had stumbled upon this secret. She had been researching the history of Savannah's elite for her lectures at SCAD, and she had uncovered the truth about the Davenports. She had realized that the Davenport Foundation was not a force for good, but a way for the family to perpetuate its power and conceal its crimes. Davenport knew that Eleanor was close to exposing him. He couldn't allow her to reveal the truth about his family's past, a truth that would destroy his reputation and his empire. So he had silenced her, and Julian as well, to ensure their secret remained buried. Marcus, the private investigator, had also been a threat. Eleanor had hired him to confirm her suspicions, and he had gotten too close to the truth. Davenport had ordered his death, staging it as a suicide to throw the police off his trail. Izzy finally understood the full extent of Davenport's evil. He was a predator, a monster who had used his wealth and power to manipulate and destroy anyone who threatened his carefully constructed world. The dramatic irony was complete. The man who was admired and respected by Savannah's elite was, in reality, a ruthless killer, a guardian of a dark and deadly secret. Izzy confronted Davenport at his mansion, the same opulent setting where he had so convincingly played the role of the grieving benefactor. But this time, Izzy saw him for who he truly was: a cold, calculating killer, a man consumed by his own twisted ambition. Davenport, realizing that his carefully constructed facade had crumbled, didn't deny the accusations. He confessed to everything: the murders of the Atwoods, the death of Marcus, the elaborate cover-up. He spoke of his family's legacy, his need to protect it, his belief that some secrets were worth killing for. The climax was swift and decisive. Davenport, cornered and exposed, tried to escape, but Izzy was too quick. She apprehended him, the handcuffs biting into his wrists, the symbol of his power and impunity, now a mark of his downfall. Justice was finally served. Davenport was brought to trial, his crimes laid bare for all of Savannah to see. The trial was a spectacle, a reckoning for the city's elite. The carefully constructed image of the Davenport family was shattered, its dark legacy exposed. Davenport was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, where he would spend his remaining days contemplating the consequences of his actions. The Atwood family could finally rest in peace, their deaths avenged, their memory honored. But the story doesn't quite end there. In the aftermath of the trial, Izzy received an anonymous package. Inside was a single old photograph, a portrait of a young woman with piercing eyes and a defiant stare. The woman was a Davenport, a distant relative of Arthur, a woman who had been ostracized by the family for speaking out against their crimes. On the back of the photograph was a handwritten message: "The truth is a dangerous thing, but it must be told." The photograph and the message raised a disturbing question. Was there someone else out there, someone else who knew the Davenport family secrets? Someone who was willing to expose them? Was the case truly closed? Or was there another chapter to this dark story, a chapter that was yet to be written? The final scene leaves Izzy standing on the waterfront, gazing out at the vast expanse of the Atlantic, the same ocean that had carried the Davenports to Savannah centuries ago, the same ocean that held so many secrets. She knew, with a chilling certainty, that the truth was far from over, that the darkness that had consumed the Atwood family was just a small part of a much larger, more sinister web. The devil's due had been paid, but the debt was far from settled.